to being a successful coffee shop than serving good coffee. And there's more to cafe management than just paying the staff wages. So we're going to be talking about business fundamentals, the lessons every cafe operator should be across, from finding the right location to commercial leases, building trust with suppliers, balancing staffing costs, and the financial realities you wish someone had told you about. So to learn more, I'd like to welcome today's panellists: Amelia Hicks, CEO and co-founder of Old Quarter Coffee; Nathan Tolman, founder and chairman of the Mulberry Group; Dave Chun, principal consultant and director of Purple Spark Advisory; and Mike Iko, co-owner of Super Freak, The Baron, Goodfella, The Truck Shop, Soulmate, and Splash. Please give our panellists a round of applause. All right, testing. We're on. Welcome to all our panellists. Great to have you here today. All right, to begin, I'd love to get your thoughts, because we have a lot of experience here on the panel to start this morning. So to start this discussion, I'd love you to think back to when you started a business for the very first time. What do you wish someone had told you about cafe management before going into business? Amelia, I'd love you to start it off. Come on.
You were relying on me, weren't you? Is that on?
Just testing microphones.
Is that on?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I think I wish that someone had told me the difference between management and the day-to-day operations and owning a business. Like the going from working in it every day to working on it. And that there is a natural progression in everyone's journey where they need to start by hustling, doing everything, wearing all the hats. You go from, the day-to-day on the bar, on the floor. You are also doing bookkeeping, you learn finance, you learn HR, you learn social media, you do everything. But the people who I see, and the biggest transformation that I had, was knowing that that can only get you so far. There's like leverage, and understanding that. So am I to ask myself, am I doing the $50 an hour job or the $1,000 an hour job? And so, you start off feeling like you're hustling and you're doing everything and you're working in the business, but working on the business is what gets you the good results.
Yeah. Well said. Does anyone have any other thoughts they'd like to start and share? Mike, yeah.
For me, I wish I knew the impact that our cafe would have on the community. Just the impact on staff, and I wish we, really solidified our values and purpose to begin with, rather than figuring it out along the way. Yeah,
great answer. Dave?
Okay. I'll build on what Mike just said. People often think we do businesses because we have to make money, we have to figure out systems and processes, and if you're running a cafe, then you have to figure out what's the best chemistry that you need to introduce to your cafe. But when you're starting a business, one thing is industry agnostic, and that is what Mike mentioned. It is why you're starting the business to begin with. Yeah. What are set of those non-negotiable values that you will carry, that no matter what happens, even if it costs you money, you will never lose those values. So whether as a cafe, are you starting an artisan cafe? So you make sure you're securing that craft part of it. Or you are starting a community cafe to make sure that community always stays there in the focus. Or you're starting a run-of-the-mill cafe where you are basically a stop shop or cafe for the cheapest and the lowest raised to the dollar value cafe, and that's fine. But that one thing that defines you, who you are and why you're starting the business, is fundamentally the most important thing. And most owners start without that, and that's a pretty risky thing to do.
Yeah, great advice. Thank you. Nathan, do you have anything to share?
Yeah, I think they've all touched on the points really well. I think probably the main thing that I would pick up on is, as you said, be really clear on what your purpose is and your why, because I think sometimes we're so focused on the business side of it that we actually forget to actually remember why we're doing it. And the reality is that when you have a really tough period in business, when you have a why, the how is really easy. Whereas when it's really tough and you don't have that purpose that's kind of driving you, it can be really easy to give up. And the reality is that being an entrepreneur or a cafe owner, you're risking so much. You're risking, you're taking often money you don't have, putting it into this ridiculous concept. If you're not driven by more than just the success of the business, the minute it gets tough, you probably will fold, which is probably what happens.
Yeah.
And the other thing, I guess, is just if you want to grow, you've got to let go. You know, there's a great point. I used to be, fanatical about doing all these things, but you can't be at all places all the time. You've got to give other people around you the chance to step in, and if you want to grow, then you've just got to let go.
Can you touch on that a little bit more, Nathan? Because I reckon that is probably one of the biggest lessons for most people. Because you built this up, you feel you're committed, it's your baby, but there is a point to grow that you do need to let go. So how have you experienced that?
Yeah, I think you bring people on into the business to do a job, and if you're really smart, you bring people on who are actually better than you at doing the job. Don't ever think you're the best at the job. Like, the goal is to always find somebody who's better at it than you are. And going from one cafe to two was a really big jump for me. I was like, how am I going to do this when I can't be in both places? And I'd go into the other cafe and be like, this isn't how it's supposed to be done. But the reality is there's always more than one way to do it. As long as it's done with purpose and conviction and it's done from the heart, you've got to give people that opportunity. And I think, you trust people to do a job, just get out of their way and let them do it.
Yeah, well said. Now, for many people looking into starting their own cafe, location is such an important topic. Just to touch on that a little bit, what are your ideal tips of finding the right location? How do you scout the perfect balance between demographic and getting the foot traffic that you need when you're looking to start a business for the first time, or maybe start a second or a third?
Okay,
Dave,
I'll
do you
take that
want
one.
to kick it off? Yeah.
Now, again, location, right? This is not very unique to cafes. It's basically applicable to businesses. It's applicable to property developers. It's applicable to any business. It's applicable to any business where brick and mortar really shows any sort of relevance. People often think we should go and see what sort of foot traffic we can grab, what sort of data we can grab. But the reality is all that data was a true snapshot of something that was true in the past, not right now. And that's what most cafe owners miss. Because what they need to see is what's about to happen in this location in the next few years as you're building your new business or venture. You need to see whether there are no more businesses coming in, whether there are more buildings coming in, what's going to happen to the vibes of the community. That's what you need to do, and that's the hardest thing to do. And most people struggle because they're so fixated on the data that somebody has given, because real estate is keen to get them the location out, somebody else is trying to have their KPIs met, and that's the tricky part that owners need to capture on.
Yeah, great advice. Nathan, I feel like you've got some experience for locations. What's your philosophy there?
Yeah, look, I think we used to always be told that you need to be on a main strip to be amongst other shops, but I really think you can stand out more by being on your own. And it also means that you've got to be better, because you actually have to encourage people to come there. So it creates a statement to your customer that says, I'm confident in my my product, and I believe in it enough to stand out on my own. But you've then still got to have the ability to get people to get there in terms of parking and access. So I think don't be afraid to be in a more of an isolated area, providing there are people within that area. And you can often get a better deal by being in a more remote area. I think back to the days when Cafe Ray in Brunswick and a Minor Place and even St. Ali back in the day. These are all cafes and places that opened in more obscure spaces with cheaper rent, but there were still people around. So don't be afraid to, I guess, be one street back.
When we're looking for a new venue or a location, we put a bit of permaculture principles into place. So we like to observe first. Rather than looking at data, we actually like to sit in the venue, look around, see how the traffic moves around and who your demographic is. But yeah, like Dave said, I'm a big fan of supply and demand. So opening where there isn't any other cafes makes it a lot easier. And then we love high residential areas, not in height, but more people.
Yeah.
Because that really builds our community and our regular clientele.
Fantastic. So finding the location's one thing, then comes the legal advice. So if we're thinking about commercial leases, retail, permit laws, there's a lot of things to consider. Have anyone here got some advice in terms of how you approach that, whether it's for the leasing of a property or even down to the staffing of visas that you've had to contend with before from experience?
Do not be afraid to negotiate, because you cannot change your rent once it is done. And it's a bit nerve-wracking for most first business owners to do that. I found that the real estate and the landlord and the lawyer was kind of intimidating, and I would say my one piece of advice is, if you don't ask, you don't get. So make sure you hustle.
Great advice.
I would say the same. Like, I look back to my first lease, and over the last 20 years, my first lease was like, yep, I'll take it. No landlord contribution, no rent free. I was like, it's a privilege to be your tenant. And then as you go along, you start to realize, hang on a minute, they need us so much more than we need them. Shops are like ships in the night. They'll just keep coming. And you get to a point where you can kind of say, hey, look, this is the situation. This is what we need to do to make this relationship work. We can't have our rent being more than 5% of our revenue. This is realistically what we're going to take a week. So, unless you're willing to come to the table. And also, we're investing in your property. We need some money, and don't be afraid, because if they say no, chances are the next guy will say yes. And it's like buying a house. You always see a house that you love and then you miss out on it. You find the next house and you love it just as much. I think, you can be a bit too emotional sometimes and just think this is the one. Just negotiate. I would always get a lawyer to review my leases. I've made mistakes in the past where I haven't had them reviewed. The fact that a commercial lease and a retail lease are very different. Landlords can charge you residential land tax or commercial land tax with one but not the other. I didn't know that. And I was like, what's this land tax bill I'm getting, So just make sure your lawyer checks the lease, that you can potentially sublease it if you need to in the future. There's so many things that I would recommend when it comes to that.
And probably just put your lease agreement into AI and just, because understanding the terms and understanding the potential risks, like everything in Nathan's brain is probably on the internet, and if you don't have access to someone to mentor you, sometimes you pay the lawyer, but you don't know what you're looking for. So you can upskill yourself so well these days.
Yes.
Yeah.
We love ChatGPT. Yes, Dave.
3 quick points. Mike mentioned you'll find the next one and you'll fall in love with the next one equally. Make sure you have your BATNA, which is basically the minimum acceptable criteria before you get into negotiation. Have that written down, because if that's not meeting, walk away. Don't get lost in that rat race or proverbial measuring contest of who's going to win, not the negotiation part. The actual game is somewhere else. The second part, when you're negotiating, sit besides them, not against them, opposite them. By that sense, when you're negotiating, tell them that what you're trying to do and how it aligns with their goals and how you're going to help them, rather than trying to pull and play a tug of war. Sit with them, like Mike mentioned. They might have equally precious incentives to get you in, and try to understand those incentives. And last, don't try to save $2,000 by not seeking legal or lawyer's advice, because the beauty of the game is when you know the rules of the game. If you don't know the rules of the game, you as a leader will be constantly bogged into things that will constantly distract you and will take away from the real stuff that you are supposed to do. So in that sense, just spend that money and take a good legal advice from your lawyer.
Okay, great advice. Mike, do you have an experience that you'd like to share?
I'll share my first experience. So I've signed 6 leases, but probably looked over 100.
Wow.
I've got my checklist. I know exactly everything to ask now. The first lease that I signed, we had a solicitor look over it, but they didn't flag it that it had turnover rent. So that was a big surprise once we went over $1 million.
Okay, so what happened?
We battled a lot. And our rent started at like $30K a year.
Wow.
But then it ended up, because we were in a major shopping complex, it ended up becoming 140 by the 7th year. So we learnt a lot from making mistakes.
Yeah, that's
But,
one we learned. We learned from.
One piece of advice would be, I know a lot of people like to sign short-term leases. I'm a big fan of going 5 + 5 + 5 or as long as possible.
Yep.
Because if you're opening a business, like surely the goal is longevity.
Yeah. Okay.
And
yep.
you can always walk away at any point, really.
All right, Nathan, do you want to challenge that? Because I heard you had a
Yeah.
different number in mind. Why is that?
I
Tell
guess
us what that was.
I guess no. I agree. I'm all
Yeah.
about long-term leases, but I would always ask for a 10-year
Okay.
+5 + 5. And the reality, like you said, is leases can be broken. You can either sell the business and transfer the lease, or you can surrender the lease and then pay rent until someone else takes it over. So don't ever think that you're going to be locked in paying rent for 10 years if you're not there. The reality is if you commit to a 10-year lease, the landlord's more likely to give you a bigger contribution. We usually ask for around 35 to 50% of the 10-year lease in a contribution. So a 5-year lease is probably this much, a 10-year lease is this much. And so, yeah, it's purely a commercial decision, but also you've got to have confidence in your ability to run a business, and you've got to show that to the landlord. I think if you're committed, they see that commitment and they're like, you know what, we're willing to invest in you as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, always for me, 10 years.
Fantastic. There's some great advice here. I hope we're all taking notes. Okay, so we've got the location, we've looked at the legal stuff. How do we then go about finding the right suppliers? What research do you do to make sure from our food, from the equipment that we want to invest in, that we are working with the right people? Mike, do you want to kick it off?
I think a big part of it comes down to your values that you share. So hopefully the suppliers have like good quality products, but I'll use Single O as an example. So when we started using Single O, we had no coffee experience. I was 23, we were opening our first cafe. And we'd met with a bunch of other coffee suppliers and they were throwing everything at us. We can give you machinery, we can give you umbrellas or whatever they are. Then we met with Dion from Single O, and his first response to me was, "Who the fuck are you?" You know, he was like, "You guys, why would I give you my coffee if you have no experience?" So it took a bit of convincing, and that actually really attracted us because it meant that he took care and pride in his product.
Yeah. And now they're a great long-term partner.
Yeah, 15 years now.
Yeah, it's incredible. Wow, fantastic. Amelia?
Yeah, I would say, so true. So true. A cafe is a business, right? So you're not a cafe owner, you're a business owner. And in anything in life, your net worth is your network, and I feel like suppliers become that. If you have suppliers that are equally as invested in your success, then you can just grow so much faster. And we're a coffee roaster, so incredibly passionate about delivering those results for our partners. And we've got multiple examples of even small tweaks in menu or simple changes, because we're working with so many cafes. We can share that knowledge, and people getting 10% extra profit, saving 5% off their COGS. So find the right ones that are values aligned, and let them help you grow.
Yeah. Dave?
Well, I don't know much about selecting your cafe supply chain, but I've worked in global strategic supply chain, running multi-million-dollar supply chains. And one thing that I often tell people is to know somebody and to judge somebody as a supplier, whether they'll treat you better in 5 years' time, go and speak with their staff members.
Yeah.
How they treat their staff members will give you an idea about how they're going to treat you once the deal is inked. Second thing you can do is go and talk to the other customers. Go and find out who are the other customers and what the pains and the problems that they're dealing with. We live in a very volatile world right now. Global supply chains, how sourcing is being done, we are essentially being in a glass bowl. If you as a company, as a cafe owner, are saying that we are building a community-focused cafe, and on the other side of the world you're buying your beans from the most unethically sourced farm, people will know and they'll smell it. And your people means your customer and your staff will smell it, and that's not going to fly very well.
Yeah. Great advice. And Nathan, I can't even imagine how many suppliers you've dealt with over the years of your experience, but do you want to just touch on a bit of your experience in finding the right ones for you?
Yeah, look, I mean, we let our staff and our chefs do a lot of that because the relationships are so important. Making sure their just values align with your business and understand what motivates you. The reality is they're a business just as you are. And just, I guess, the importance of communication. So if you have a situation where, like they're trying to pay their bills just as much as you are, it's just about communication, because there's always going to be times when your cash flow is poor. And be really honest about it. Don't ever try and ignore those conversations, because they're getting ignored by everybody at the same time, chances are. So if you ring them and say, hey, I just need to let you know this week we're going to be a bit short. Yes. Are you okay? They're often just like, thank you so much for ringing me. I'm having nobody calling me. And then the chances are that when they get a great deal or an excess supply of something, they'll be calling you first saying, hey, we've got this product, would you guys want to use it? So just remember that it is a relationship, and they are in business as well, and communication is really important.
Fantastic, great advice. Now, we've talked a little bit about values, but how important is actually having a clear picture of what your identity is as a business or as a cafe owner or a coffee shop? How important is that when you're wanting to identify not only who you are to the market, but beyond serving great coffee and providing great service? So let's just talk about identity for a little bit. How did you each carve that for your businesses?
I literally loved that everybody here was like values, knowing who you are. I think a lot of people jump to what's my menu going to be and what's my signature drinks and what my cups, and that's kind of the stuff you dream about. But as you said, Nathan, this is a grind. It will be tough at times, but if you understand why you exist and how you want to make people feel, every decision flows from that, and it is the thing that is going to keep you motivated in the darker times. Oh, that sounds grim, doesn't it? But in the darker times. And at the end of the day, your business is only as strong as the leader. And so we need to stay motivated, and being connected to your purpose is the best way to do that.
Love it. Yeah, Mike.
What was the question again?
Just talking identity, finding that purpose for yourself before, just good coffee, we get it, good service, but how do you focus on that identity?
I think in Australia it's easy to find good coffee, good food, good service. So it's how do you stand out? How can you be different? How can you draw curiosity out of customers to actually come to your venue, rather than just, I don't know, copying people or doing the norm. Yeah.
Fantastic.
I'll add to it. When you live in Melbourne, what's ceiling for others is baseline for you. If you're starting a cafe, providing good cup of coffee that matches Melbourne standard, sorry Sydney, it's given. That has to be there. So a good coffee can't be your brand. What comes from what Amy was saying right there was from your inner self, who you are as a leader. When you can start emulating that on your staff members, and when you can start projecting onto your business, it becomes what we know brand. Now, marketing team will tell you brand's all about colors, right font and all that. That's not it. Brand is basically one thing that you carry all the time with you, and everyone knows. And if your brand is about community, a person walking in having a rough day, your people should be able to judge that. And that's not about $5 the cup you make that very second. It's about we are adding this person to our community by giving them a sense of that this is your community, this is part. And that's the most important thing that differentiates most businesses from any other business.
Nathan, for you, with so many different businesses and they've each got, they do have their own identity, what is that conversation like for you when going through that research and development phase for the next venue you're looking at opening?
Yeah, look, every venue is different, which does make it difficult, but the same DNA runs through them. And I think the two words that I just kept hearing were community and brand. Yeah. I think that's what we kind of look at is, the reality is you want your customers to be brand ambassadors or brand advocates, and you want your staff to be as well. Yeah. And if you then have a situation where your customers know why you exist just from the experience they get from the staff, then the whole mindset changes. So you've got to look at them as someone that is out there actually propelling your brand and promoting it. But if you're not clear on it, it's really hard to promote it. So don't jump a step. Be really clear on your why first, what your values are, what your purpose is. Make sure your team know it, and then that'll start to filter through to the customers or the brand ambassadors, as we want to call them, and then you're away.
Fantastic. So you've done all this prep work, you've got everything ready, you've got your opening date set for the first time you're opening a cafe. What are the things that you look for to make that first impression? Because I know that you say it doesn't count, but for some people, and I guess first impressions do matter. So is there any advice you can share with our audience if you've got someone looking to open a venue for the very first time? What can they do within their power to be prepared for that opening day and set the best impression possible?
Going to say don't.
Speaking from
fuck it up.
experience.
I guess we've had so many good and bad openings over the years.
Oh, really?
I mean, the reality is our first opening, we had no customers. I asked my waitress to sit in the window and pretend to be a customer, and she was like, this is not going to work. And she became my business partner over the last 10 years. But, it changes from one venue to the next.
Yeah.
We opened so stupidly, we opened Top Paddock on Australia Day without a soft launch, and it was like the craziest day ever. I was telling staff to do jobs that actually weren't even staff, they were customers. I couldn't even tell the difference between, it was so crazy. And I was like, can you please run this coffee to a table? And they're like, I'm actually a customer. But we became good friends out of it. But the biggest learning I got was when we went to open Higher Ground that week, the gas didn't, the electric ovens didn't work. So we had to delay a week. So we had all these staff on with nothing to do. So we did a week's training. That was the blueprint going forward. Like to be able to run through an opening before you open. I know it's expensive and we all have such tight budgets to open a restaurant, but if you can add an extra 5 or 10K to your budget to do a full week of training before you open, it's such a difference.
Smart.
I think I'm poor. I need to
restaurants
really
do it. Why the hell shouldn't cafes or coffee shops do it?
That's
it's
great,
such a big game changer because you want to know what's going to go wrong before you open. You want to see how people are going to cope under pressure. And the reality is people are so less forgiving these days when you open a restaurant or a cafe. They want perfection on day one.
You're amazing. That's inspiring. I think that maybe as well knowing that everyone's going to make mistakes is another good thing. And I always say it's about how you make people feel. So if you've got one chance at a first impression, focus on the vibe.
The vibe.
It's
all about the vibe. What is the vibe for you, Amelia?
That's a hard question. I think just welcome, we talk about genuine not transactional. That's one of our core values is community builder, because there's a difference between polite and genuine and really seeing someone and just serving them. So because we will, wait times might be 20 minutes and whatever, but if they got a genuine smile, we're good.
Yeah, we're good. How about you, Mike? You've had a few openings.
A little bit unconventional and complete opposite of Higher Ground. We basically, in all 6 venues, we've finished the fit out and we've opened the next day pretty much.
Wow. Talk about cutting
literally
it fine.
like 2 a.m. night before, cleaning, prepping. Just go for it. Is it good advice? I don't know.
Does it work?
It works, and it's a lot of fun. Adrenaline's high.
Chaos.
But if there is any advice that I could give on it is the one thing that we do have ready is all of our systems documented, ready for the next day so we can set our team up for success.
Wow. So you get through the opening, you're sitting around going like, when are we going to turn over a positive net growth here? What's been that experience like, from different venues or, and the volume of shops you've opened? When is that moment you look for that pivotal turning point that it is going to turn over positive growth? Do you have a time frame or a guide in mind? Is there a benchmark for that?
So I think, and obviously there's a lot of variables, but probably your fit out costs and how much money goes into the business to begin with. But for us, we aim to be about a year in.
A year in?
Yeah. Some of our cafes have been 2 to 3 years because we've spent a lot on the fit out, but we've expected that. So we've planned for that as well.
Wow.
Are you saying when you want to pay your fit out off, or when you want to start making a profit?
I mean,
regardless
profit-wise,
of
I mean, it's good. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like the dream used to be to pay your fit out within 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
I'm still paying off some fit outs 5 years later. So, but
You have really nice fit outs.
thank you.
I feel the budget may be quite large.
So yeah, I think you've got to be realistic, and if you're driving the business so hard that you want to make a profit from day one, it's going to be a terrible experience from a guest and from a staff experience. So yeah, I would say, give yourself at least 6 months before you want to start seeing some profitability, and have a little bit of runway in there to be able to, like the reality is you're not going to get your wages in line within the first couple of weeks. Your revenue targets, you might get a good start and then it might dip and then grow again. So just prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
Okay, a bit of patience there.
Yeah.
And what is the greatest operational cost though? Like, just what do you find it is? Is it fit out? Is it equipment? Is it staff? Love to hear your thoughts.
Wages.
Wages. Yeah.
Especially now. I'm sure everyone's experiencing the same thing where the benchmark used to be 30% and now they sit on the higher end of 30.
30.
But there's plenty of ways to reduce that. So, yeah.
Just to touch on that, what exactly are you looking? Yeah, but come on, tell us your secrets, Mike. How are you going to reduce that?
It all depends on your concept, but some of our cafes do table service, some don't. But that reduces if we don't do table service, we're reducing our wages by about 7% at those cafes. And then when it comes down to day-to-day operations with your managers, just like every half an hour counts. Like for us, if anyone's standing around, everyone knows someone's going to be sent home straight away.
Okay.
Staff retention. So with wages, I think a big cost of it goes into training and onboarding. So the longer you can hang on to staff, the better, just to avoid that.
Yeah, I would say that wages and COGS are the biggest cost to any business. And usually you're working around 25 to 30% for COGS. I'm obsessed with COGS right now because wages just keep going up, but that is a metric that you can really manipulate. So my kind of 4 top tips when it comes to managing COGS is know your goal. Firstly, I work with so many business owners that don't know what their goal even is, right? So figure out what you want it to be, number 1. Number 2 is track that thing weekly, daily, if you're a larger operation. We don't really do food, so we don't really, in 3 out of our 4 venues, so we track, weekly instead of daily. You cannot get into a position where 2 weeks after the month ends, you're getting your report from your bookkeeper telling you how much your cost of goods was. That is the single biggest thing you want to be working on every single day. Yeah. Number 3 would be menu science. I got myself into a lovely little position where my COGS were 50%. This was in the early days, and I was selling a breakfast wrap that was costing me basically as much as I was selling it for. I know it's bad, but solidarity. But the one takeaway is you want to make sure the thing you sell the most of is the cheapest to make, and just try and work from that. And then number 4 would be, oh my goodness, the 1%'s the micro. One of the biggest ones is portion creep. Okay, so say you're making scrambled eggs and it's not portion controlled, and 10 to 20% extra is going on the plate. You sell 200 of those, it costs you $1. It's 10 grand a year, and I guarantee in most kitchens there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those little micro things. So, that's a massive thing.
Awesome. And any last thoughts?
Just business 101s, right?
Yeah.
As an owner, you need to know your cash burn rate. How much are you burning every month? How much you're burning every day? While that might not be important for everyone else to know, but as a business leader, you really must know how much am I burning every day. Second thing, carry about 18 months runway. As a business owner, it's really hard. It's really hard to plan 18 months. but have a plan how you will get to that 18-month runway all the time.
Yes.
Not the money in the bank, but how you will get there. Don't spend that extra money if you don't need to. Be brutal about things that are actually giving you what you're promising versus that are good to have, and take them out when you need to. I 100% agree with Amy. You have to be brutal sometimes. Those processes, those nifty little extra things that you can have as, POS, checkout point, take them out. And that's what as a business owner you must consider.
Nathan. Yeah.
So much has already been said. I guess we do our forecasting every week, so our staff do basically a wage and a revenue forecast for the following week, which we then approve. So if they forecast 50% wages, well, that's we have a variation between venues, and it might be between 40 to 42 or 3% wages, which I know is high, but that's how we run. And then every day they update it live, and so they kind of gamify it. So if they're losing on Monday or Tuesday, they need to find a way to make it up on Wednesday or Thursday. And then we do a review the previous week as a leadership group, where all the restaurants or cafes run through their previous week's figures to see, this is what I forecast, this is what I did. Then they say, this is how I'm going this week, and this is how it looks next week. So there's a real open kind of policy around COGS and wages and overheads. We get our team to regularly review overheads as well, because you might have a situation where you're paying for a service that you're not using. Like, oh, why are we using Dropbox? No one's using that anymore. That's $10,000 a year. So get the team into that. What are we spending on linen? The other thing I would say is, so many of your suppliers have great technology that you're not using. Use it, like, whether it be a rostering app or a costing app or a menu, there's so many great tools you can use that give you data that we don't even realize, and we're paying for that service. And don't be afraid to get those companies into your business and be like, hey, help me, my wages are at this, or my COGS are here, how can I do that? Because if you're, like you said, you're putting out a menu item that's your most popular menu item, and it's actually getting costed at 35, 40%, it's a really lost opportunity. So your most popular dishes should be the best costed dishes. So how do you get that data,
Amelia.
I think this comes back to what about working on the business and about the $1,000 jobs. And I think that's such a cool mindset takeaway that I think the people that I work with, that we get the best outcomes, because and I always say you need to look at the small things, but over a year, because like you said, you just see it as this little, but when you add it up, I think I did the maths, this is quick maths, but I think it was something like a full week's wage was a minute per day across my 4 venues, or maybe 60 hours. So you've really got to understand that the small things add up, and this is an industry with low margin for error, 2 to 6% net profit across this industry means that daily you want to be hustling this. But if you're new, don't freak out, because a few simple systems and you're on top of it. It's 2 major numbers,
Yeah, I would also say, you've got to love business and you've got to love numbers, but try and get your team to love the numbers as well. It's so great when you go into one of your venues and one of the managers is like, I've tweaked this, or I've done that, and it's just, you need that, because it's too much to do it on your own. So share those numbers with your team. Let them see the reality that we made this much money this week, but we were left with this much. How do we make it that much? Or we actually lost money this week, because people just assume that you're making money, you're making profit, and you're not. You can have one week where you make a profit and it's minor, and then you have a bad week and it wipes out 3 weeks worth of profit. So get your team invested in that as well.
Okay, amazing advice here on the couch. Now, just to touch on with staffing a little bit more, obviously we're trying to be lean. Wages are a huge operational cost. When is that moment, though, that you need to admit that you need more staff to give you a hand? Is there a number you look to, or is there a percentage or something that you think is, in terms of advice here, for knowing when's the right time to actually increase the volume of staff needed?
Never increase the number of staff.
Or is there an operational system that you find that's actually helping you now, has made a huge reduction?
I think we are operating in a time when staffing costs are continually going up, and it's our biggest cost, and it is leading to closures in the industry. So you guys might have a better answer for the first question, but I ran some numbers again, just trying to understand around the question of, do you go for innovation? Do you invest in automation, equipment? Like, how do we think about efficiencies? And, 1 hour a week is $2,000. So maybe it's more than that, actually. But, it's like, if you're going to buy a piece of equipment that's going to save you an hour versus adding an hour, I think if cash flow allows, that's where the industry has to go. And this is not about eliminating staff. This is not about trusting our staff. This is not about having amazing staff. This is not about not investing in them. This is about understanding the realities of our industry and understanding that, adding staff isn't always what makes it easier. Thinking about efficiencies at the same time is important.
Mike, I was going to ask you, what's efficiency look like in your stores right now?
Efficiencies?
Yeah.
They're good.
Is that because of the equipment you're using or because of the staff reductions?
We've got great staff. And in saying all of this, the goal isn't to reduce staff. If anything, I love employing people, and if wages could be higher and we could charge more, I'm all for it. If baristas could get paid $50 an hour, that's awesome. But I don't know. Mine's not very polished. If we start seeing staff becoming a bit stressed, or the culture's starting to shift a little bit because people are starting to, just struggle with their jobs, then we look at increasing staff. Efficiencies, I'm probably not the best to answer that one, but I hire great chefs and managers who do that.
That's okay. That's fantastic. Yeah. And Nathan, do you have much experience you'd like to share with?
I don't think for us it's often about cutting staff. It's all about revenue. So just find ways to promote or grow your product, because people come to work. They don't want to be quiet or bored either, but you'll see on the numbers if it's too lean. Like I said, we kind of run at 40 or 42%, but if we have a really good revenue week, it might be 35, and the team didn't have to work that much harder. They actually didn't have to work harder at all. But if it goes to a 32, we're like, oh, that's too low. We know that would have been a hard week. So just for us, it's not so much how do we cut wages, it's how do we grow revenue, and that's kind of like the main focus. Just how do you get an extra $1 or $2 out of a customer, because the reality is if you've got staff that aren't able to service your team or your customers, they're not going to be able to sell to them, are they?
Yes, yeah, exactly. But what does that look like? What are some of those little incremental increases you can look to add value?
We just encourage staff, whenever you clear a plate or whenever you clear a coffee cup or a glass of wine, can I get you something else? Don't ever leave that opportunity left. We daily look at our average head spend. We know what it is every day, and we can see, hey, yesterday was a really great head spend. We can see it was up $2 on normal, and that's we kind of celebrate it, and the team get a bit excited about it too.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, for the interest of time, one last question for you all here today on the couch. Can you leave us with some wise words of wisdom for prospective cafe owners or current cafe owners here in the audience today? What is the one piece of advice you have for them about cafe management right now in the current climate?
Are they managing a cafe already?
Yeah. They might be. It could be a prospective cafe owner sitting here, or someone existing has been
Hands up
running a
who's
cafe
got a venue
for
at the moment. Who's got their own?
Current operators, it's quite a few.
And anyone wanting to open a venue for the first time? That's good to see. We haven't scared you off. Look, I guess for those that have the venue already, you know what you're doing. For those that haven't got a venue, I would just say, just remember that whatever you spend going into it, you've got to make that back. And it has to come from your customer. So it's all good and well wanting everything brand new and shiny, but you can save so much money by buying secondhand. We're doing a project at the moment that the architects love designing beautiful spaces, which I love. The front counter was some crazy price, which was over budget. I went and got it on Facebook Marketplace for $200, and it's beautiful. So just be willing to kind of save money where you can and spend money where you need to. You can always upgrade and put additional things in later. But there's nothing worse than opening a venue that has so much debt over it that you're not enjoying it and there's no way out of it. So just go in as lean as you can and just enjoy it.
Great advice, Nathan. Dave, can I ask your advice?
I call it dirty MVP, dirty minimum viable product. Exactly what Mike mentioned. Figure out one thing that differentiates you from everybody else, spend money on that. Everything else, be a cockroach. Cut money ruthlessly, save what you need to save. That's it.
Awesome. Mike?
Mine's more about the why. I'm a really big fan of people and culture. So the reason why we do this is to be hospitable. So hiring the right people and having the right culture in the workplace is a big thing. Everyone that works in our venues, they're all great, they're all positive, but it's because of, like, we're hiring people with the right attitudes. They enjoy coming to work. Our rosters are published more than a month in advance because we respect their time as well. I think if you invest in your staff and actually show care to them, that flows on to customers.
Great advice. Amelia?
Yeah, I feel so bad. I was like brutal on the staff, but it really is about the people. I think definitely it's so true. I would say that owning a business is probably like a personal development course. I think apart from your intimate partner and your kids, it is going to teach you more about yourself than anything else you do in your life, because it is going to test you in ways you didn't realize. And I think the people who understand that nothing changes if they don't change are the ones that have longevity in the industry, because they really know that the buck stops with them. So yeah, do the work on yourself, not just the skills, because we need to develop new skills as we go from an operator to an owner, but mostly invest in your mindset, because that is the biggest key to success in business.
Well said, well said. Well, thank you so much to each of you for sharing your insights, your experiences, lessons learned, and amazing wisdom here today about everything you've come to know and love about our industry and experiences you've had. I wish we had more time for this, but unfortunately that concludes the first session here today on the couch here at the Cafe Education stage. Please can you give a big round of applause to Mike Iko, Dave Trahan, Nathan Tolman and Amelia Hicks. Thank you so much.